that everybody take a look at these public forum guidelines. They are largely patterned after the guidelines that the Charles County Board of Commissioners uses for public forums. I asked Melody to put 5 minutes in addition to 3. The commissioners apparently put a 3-minute limit, but it's discretionary, so we can go beyond that. Okay. If everyone can take a look at that. While we're doing that, one of the things I'm going to suggest that we need to do is make a charter board survey. I didn't have one when I talked to the Rotary Club, so I typed one up. Again, I patterned it after Cecil. I forgot to put term limits on there on the questions. I can tell you I passed out over 20. I got 4 of them back. But that's something that we ought to move forward on. And I'm going to suggest that this is what I put on these. The first, again,
can
largely
you just email it to us and then we can.
I'm sorry?
Can you email it to us and we can look at it and.
Okay, why don't we do that? Okay, because what I'm going to ask is that we start having the public hearings in September. And I'd like to try to do 2 things. I think we've reached a point of diminishing returns as far as just having government officials.
Agreed.
I see a few.
Amen.
So if we open it up to the public, I talked to Angela Breck from the Maryland Independent. She said she'd do a little piece and advertise our schedule. And we'll see. We'll talk with Kim about being able to televise it at different locations instead of just here. She's not here tonight, unfortunately, but we'll see if we can work that out. I'm going to suggest we go back to twice a month. That is the 2nd Thursday and the 4th Thursday. Mr. Travala had said that we ought to spend roughly 20 sessions writing. We all know that there will be a certain amount of cutting and pasting that we're going to do. I'm going to suggest that we have a public meeting. We can schedule it for 6:30. Maybe we could start with a writing session for half an hour and give citizens a little chance to get there, because 6:30 is a little bit early for people who want to try to have dinner and get there, and then see how many citizens show up at 7 o'clock, and we'll listen to what they have to say. And if we have time after that, we'll continue with writing. We can have Mr. Travala come to the meeting, and he can help us as far as any bumps as we go along. He suggested once before that he thought Frederick was a boilerplate that we might want to look at. So I'm going to ask everybody to look at Frederick and look at any of the others.
Again, can you send that out in a Word version?
Send what out?
The Frederick charter.
We don't have.
You don't have it anymore?
Well, somebody's going to have to type it.
You can scan it, but that's PDF. That's not Word.
PDF converter. It's online for free.
Well, I'll tell you what we'll do. One way or another,
Send it to me.
we'll get anybody who needs a copy of Frederick, give Melody your address, and we can photocopy it and mail it to you if nothing else.
You can? You have a PDF converter?
Do like certain things, A, B, or C. You have.
Dante said he would convert it for me, so I will.
But Kim's got one too, so.
Okay.
I mean, it's
I'll
free.
email it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
free.
We'll see what we can do. If somebody can convert it and get it to Melody, we'll take care of that. Okay?
Cool.
Okay.
Then you can mark it up.
The
You can just.
You already have it.
okay. We may still have some people that we want to invite as experts in one area or another. I think we can still work those in as we go along. But one thing I'd like to do tonight is see if we can bring on this public forum guidelines. I think they're pretty innocuous, and we have to. We want to have that available when we have our public forum, presumably starting the 2nd Thursday in September.
Are you going to have every meeting be a public forum, or just the 2nd one or the 4th one?
Why don't we see what our turnout is like? My guess is that we ought to try it. At first, I think we ought to try every meeting and then see what happens. If we do public forums through September, October, November, once we get into the holiday season, I don't know how that's going to work in terms of.
So how many public forums do you envision having?
Every meeting is a public forum.
Well,
This is a public forum. I mean, you want that where people can actually speak. I mean, this is open to the public, the meeting.
Yeah, but
It's not a forum.
No, a public forum is going to be one where we invite the citizens to speak, and I think we ought to. I think we ought to do that a fair amount.
Okay, but I'd just like to point out that the resolution creating this committee called for at least 2, which means you can have more. But I'm trying to envision this. So what are you talking about, 12, 14 public forums? I mean, 2 a month?
Maybe.
2 a month, certainly in September, October, November. I'll count the months up.
Okay.
4 or 5 months. I think it's better for us to err in having too many
Well, I
than
have a
too
problem with
few.
that. I just want to understand what you're doing.
That's going to be my suggestion. I think, at least as far as September goes, we certainly ought to move forward with that. Angela Breck asked if we could give her a more detailed, so she could do a little publication that maps out everything. I told her I didn't want to commit us for the rest of the term to one thing or another. But my feeling would be that the more opportunities we give the public to inform us of their ideas, the better off we are.
Absolutely.
So I guess I just want to get the format correct. So we're going to have a meeting. We have a meeting, and then there's a certain portion of the time that's for public input. Or is it
I'm going
the
to
entire
suggest.
meeting?
I'm going to suggest that we meet the same as we have, 6:30.
Okay.
Second and fourth Thursdays, and that we open it up at 7 or 7:30.
Okay.
To have the public.
Okay.
And if we want to say 7:30, that gives us an hour to write.
Do that.
Okay. Does 7:30 sound reasonable to
Yes.
everyone? I'm looking around the room. I can call for a vote. I suppose we could discuss this, but if we do 7:30, that gives us an hour to do that, and then have the citizens talk to us.
I have a lot of questions about functionality. Are we going to try and do the public forums in this room, or would we move to the auditorium?
We were going to talk to Kim about where we can do them, and try to move them around the county a little bit as well. Okay, so I'm going to ask that we hold off, and we'll let everybody know where it's going to be. But it's probably a good idea to do something on the western side, in the northern part of the county, down towards Cobb Island. Depending on what the technology will allow us.
Okay, I guess my next question is, I remember way back in the early meetings, we were talking about we needed to have a draft to submit this to show the public for a comment, because otherwise we're not anywhere near that point. I think Ed Holland called me with this thing he's got coming up on Saturday, and he had no understanding of what was going on. He thought it was a done deal.
Yeah.
He thought the commissioners approved it. And so I had a long talk with Ed telling him about it. But he's been talking to these other presidents of these HOAs. And so he's been
here's the thing,
passing out
Ernie,
this information.
people are going to talk.
Yeah.
And in terms of, if people watch all the meetings that we've had, then they've had an opportunity to get a pretty good grip on what we're trying to do and where we are on things. I read his letter to the editor. He wrote a letter to the editor.
He wrote that letter before I talked to him.
Well, that's
Gonna write a
there's
retraction?
and when I spoke with the Rotary, they're hearing different things out there, and some people are in favor of a charter and they're saying things about it, and some people are opposed and they're saying things, and not everything is accurate.
Yeah.
But hopefully in the public hearings that we have, we'll give everybody a chance to air
I
it
think we need
out.
some kind of presentation to put across to the public for them to respond
I
to.
think so too.
If we just ask for input without telling them anything,
We need that PowerPoint presentation.
I think we need to think about this a little bit more. At a minimum, can you put together your proposal on how we're going to do this and email it to us so that we can, make comments and suggestions on it? Sure. Okay. I mean,
right now, we need to focus on process because that's what the public doesn't understand. And I think once they understand the process, we'll have less questions because people will then get an understanding. So I think the initial thing we should do in these public forums is lay out the process of what we're doing and how it works, because that's what a lot of people don't understand. And without a charter to show them, they're not going to have anything to respond to unless we give them something.
Well, that thing. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I think some people, and this is, when I spoke with the Rotary Club, of the people who chose to respond, everybody said they'd heard about the charter board, and they either heard about it from the website or the newspaper or coworkers or many of those things. And in terms of the questions that they asked, some people had watched some of the meetings and they had an idea of the process. In terms of how much, what the newspaper chooses to write or not write, obviously, as I said, Angela Breck said that the Independent would do a piece for us, and they'll advertise it, and I believe they'll tell the public what the issues are. We've talked about things, and in terms of educating the public, unless you've been to many of these meetings, there are pros and cons, for instance, to voting by district and voting at large, and we've heard a lot about it. And there are going to be citizens who probably have an opinion one way or the other who haven't heard the other side. But I believe that just looking at the guidelines that the county uses, we're there to, in a public forum, to allow them to speak to us. We're not to engage in a debate with them. We're just to hear their point of view, and to the extent it would be which is the cart and which is the horse. How much do we want to have? I think it's fair to. How much do we want to have written as a proposal before we go before the citizenry? Are we prepared to say we want a county executive? Are we prepared to say we want 5 or we want 7 or possibly
I think you
more?
can give like a multiple choice kind of thing. You say this is what's in the number is to be determined. Here are the considerations. What are your thoughts?
And Lynn, I don't want to mistake intent. However, the way that I'm receiving what you're saying makes perfect sense to me. I would lay out public forum in the very beginning of this process so that people have input. Then there's going to be a tapering off of those sessions because we're going to be heavily in session and writing. And then to Ernie's point, you come back to public forums because you'll have something to show them on which they can speak or speak to. But I think the danger in not having those initial public forums is that you fall into this perception that we've done this in secrecy, where you didn't have input until we've actually created something, whereby the other way that you're suggesting gives us the ability and gives the citizenry the ability to have input as we go through the writing of a document as opposed to input once it's written.
I'm talking about an outline.
Which is what I thought we talked about the last time we met, which was we needed to create the marketing side of it through the cable spots as well as the newspaper as to what the charge was, what the timeline is, that type of stuff, which I think feeds into the first public process without going into specifics. Right? Then we gathered elected officials' comments, then we gather public comments, and we start really writing into it. And then at that point in time, we go back out with a draft document or whatever for groups, businesses, leaders,
Whoever.
HOAs, whatever, to respond on. But I thought we were going to try to get a couple members in front at the, and I don't know the name of that show, but on the
Yes.
cable and stuff,
News
to
8.
explain to everyone what we're doing, and at the same time get T-Bone and Heather talk about it, and the paper talk about it, and whoever else will give us free press to say this is what we're doing, and by the way, we're going to start public comment or whatever.
I didn't think of T-Bone and Heather, but we can do that.
I mean, they're great. A lot of people down county listen to them.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I understand that I'm out of order, but I really would just ask your indulgence on this one matter with regard to the media. We have a media team, and they can certainly help you. But I think one of the things as a commissioner that is becoming very problematic for us when we're out there is that we need something in the way of structure, as even if it is just bullets or something. And I really believe that for your public hearings, you'll get more out of your citizens.
Well, when we all came into this process, full disclosure, only a few of us have law degrees. I mean, we didn't know quite what questions to ask, and I think the public will have the same thing. I mean, it's a pie in the sky thing to say, oh, great, they're going to write a charter or not. We're going to write a charter, so you vote yes or no. So the paper was incorrect or the opinion was incorrect. But I think the citizenry doesn't have an idea of what goes into it. Some of them do, and that's great. But I mean, we didn't know the questions to ask in the beginning. So I think in some ways, I don't want to say, term limits, zoning, but to give them a guideline of these are the things that are coming up. So we want you to think about these things because it affects everyone.
Okay, let me make this suggestion. When we talk to the Maryland Independent, this is what I'm going to suggest to them. I'm going to suggest that among the issues we're dealing with are how should council members be elected? And the broad choices are at large, by district, combination. I suppose you can leave one last block, other. Should Charles County have a county executive? I lifted this question from Cecil. How should the county executive be placed in office? Cecil had it on there as being chosen by the council, but are you, another one, are you currently in favor of charter government for Charles County? And then another one that I neglected to put on here, and that is, are term limits a good idea? If so, 1 term, 2 term, 3 term, 4 term. I think that certainly gets the ball rolling. And in terms of being more specific than that, I don't know how much agreement we have on everything right now. So to put out that we're going to do this, that, or the other thing might not be the wisest thing to do. But I do think the independent will, if those are the main points, if there are any others that you think we ought to ask the independent to highlight for us, we could add those.
Now, when are we going to the independent?
The Maryland Independent, I spoke with Angela Breck. I told her that after we had this meeting, I would let her know what schedule we would have with regard to public forum hearings.
Well, okay. I'm all in favor of public input. But I guess it's like Ernie was saying, it's functionality of it. How are we going to do this? Should we? I know, we're not going to have a completed draft of a charter. We do need to get started on that process. So what do we present? We have to present something. We just can't have a public forum and say, okay, we're the charter board. It's open to the public. You just can't say that.
Why?
You got to give somebody
Why not?
something. Huh?
Why not? Why do you have to present something? That feeds into that whole process of this is a done deal.
No, it doesn't.
Absolutely, I respectfully disagree with you. It absolutely does.
Absolutely. And I didn't mean it that way. Of course, you have your opinion. But my opinion is that it doesn't do that. I mean, for us to list some key items like you were talking about, I don't think that list you recited is all inclusive on some of the key issues that we're talking about. I don't see any problem of writing those and then getting public comment on those things. I don't think that's any indication that it's a done deal.
I don't disagree with that. What I'm saying to you is when what that something looks like, to me, if we walked out September, October, November, and we had to draft anything, I'm questioning the transparency of process.
If we have a
I'm-
draft
If we have a
document?
draft anything, a draft
presentation?
document, I'm
No, a
sorry.
draft
If we have a draft
presentation, you
document.
say, this is the charter, this is who's on it, this is how long. I mean,
If we had a draft charter, because that's what I heard, we should have some document. If we had that document, I think that's dangerous. I think that's dangerous.
Nobody said- I don't think anybody's saying that, though.
But that's what Ernie said.
I thought what
That's
we
exactly
talked
what
about
he said.
last
Hold on,
month.
let's hold on for just a second.
Was trying to-
I don't want to go with Robert's Rules of Order quite yet, but in terms of everybody talking at the same time, we're not going to get anywhere, okay? So I don't know, perhaps I was overreaching or overly ambitious with regard to what we might do the second Thursday in September. But I'm going to suggest that we start meeting twice a month, and that starts in September. Okay? I'm going to suggest that we have Mr. Travala come down and go over things with us. Maybe if a lot of this is not controversial, maybe not quite boilerplate, but there are a lot of procedural issues here that I think maybe we can certainly get started on. As far as emails go, if we want to email each other and reach some sort of consensus, I don't. When we have all 9 people here, we can vote on how we're going to move forward on this. I think we have to. Everyone agrees that we need some public input. We don't seem to quite agree now. It's 8:30, and we promised we would be out of here at 8:30. I'm not even going to ask us to review the minutes of the last meeting. We can do both of them next time. When we meet on the second Thursday, we can go over this and we can decide where we are. Everybody can think about it. You can think of Matthew's points. You can think of Dante's points, and see where
I guess
you are.
what she's saying about the email is just for us to, if you could just put in writing your presentation, that's all. That's all I think she's
And
talking
then,
about.
yeah.
Then we can
yeah,
deal with it.
and say.
And if we reach some sort of resolution by email, that's fine as well in terms of
Yeah.
how we want to move forward.
You know, I'll take a stab at.
adjourn.
Well, just interrupt me. I'll take a stab at writing a setting the stage, not anything about setting the stage of why we're here and all that, so we can have something to look at.
Okay, we'll all be happy to read your email. Okay. Okay. Having resolved things to that point, Ernie, you had a motion.
I second.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? All right. Great.